Welcome to Le Circuit, Mont, Tremblant, Quebec for race number 3 of the Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup Series. Hello everyone, I'm Brian McGorman. This is the third race of our 8-race Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup Championship Series, in which the drivers compete for prize money of almost $500,000. And this is our second straight race here at Le Circuit. Joining me as always is Pat Gonzalez. And Pat, the last time around here at Le Circuit, we had a heck of a battle in round 2.
Well, we really had 2 races, Brian. The first on a dry racetrack involved Richard Spinard and David Tennyson, who had started from the pole. Then it started to rain. The track was very, very wet. The officials stopped the race and then gave them 5 minutes to change tires. Just about everybody went to the treaded Pirelli P0s, but there were 3 drivers who did not. One of those was Rick Bye, and on those slicks with a drying racetrack after the restart, he simply ran away with his first big victory here at Mont Tremblant in the series. But you know, there were many championship hopefuls coming into that second round, including Richard Laporte. He had qualified well, but his chance at the championship ended up here in Namuro Corner. Challenging for second place with Richard Spinard, Laporte got out of shape under braking. You can see that the cars actually touch here, and this leaning on Spinard may have helped keep Laporte on the track as they went through the S's. Moments later, Laporte got past and stayed in the middle of the track in Namuro to protect the position. He then gets out of shape, hits the tire wall, and does a complete rollover, practically destroying his Rotisserie Laurier 944.
Richard Laporte is back and ready to go, but his team really had to do some scrambling to get the car ready for this week's race. As you can tell, the lettering isn't even complete, but he will be back on the track at Le Circuit, where close racing is the rule. And here's Pat on how the standard is maintained. I'm standing in the impound area where after each Rothmans Porsche qualifying session or race, several of the cars are brought in here, and they're checked over by the Canadian Automobile Sports Club officials to make sure that they do conform to the very stringent rules in this series. If there is an infraction or a problem with one of the cars, that driver could very well be disqualified from the race or a good qualifying effort negated. It's one more way that Rothmans Porsche race officials make sure that these cars are as equally matched as possible, and that'll usually provide for some very close, great racing action out there on the track. Thanks, Pat. The close racing action has produced a tight top 10 in the points race to the year-end championship. And here's a look at the standings. Richard Spinard leads with 45 points. Chris Gleason and Uli Beery are tied for second on the strength of good finishes here and at Mosport in round 1. Larry Caruso is fourth with 37 points. Jacques Leliev has 34. Normand Boyer and Ludwig Heimrath are tied for 6th spot with 33 points. And both Richard Laporte and David Tennyson have 30 points. They both crashed in round 2 after finishing 2nd and 3rd in the season opener. Ted Powell rounds out the top 10 with 28 points. We'll be back with round 3 of the Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup Championship from Mont Tremblant, Quebec in just a moment. Welcome back to round 3 of the Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup Series at Le Circuit, Mont Tremblant, Quebec. I'm Brian McGorman along with Pat Gonzalez, and we are just about set for the start of the race. The cars are on the grid, and to run down the starting grid, here's Pat. Qualifying has brought the 2 1989 race winners together. Richard Spinard will start from the pole position, and the winner in race number 2, Rick Bye, will be on the outside of the front row. Jacques Leliev shares row 2 with the 1988 champion Scott Goodyear. It's Liliev's best qualifying effort to date. Scott will drive the Diet 7-Up guest car. Row 3 is Chris Gleason and David Tennyson. Gleason finished second here the last time, and Tennyson holds the Turbo Cup qualifying record here at Mont Tremblant. In row 4, it's Bill Adam alongside Jacques Bienvenu. Richard Laporte and Uli Beery make up row 5. Ludwig Heimrath and Larry Caruso are in row 6. David Seabrook and Len Campbell in row 7. Reinhold Schill and Normand Boyer make up row 8. David King and Ted Powell in row 9. Marc Quentin and Peter Overing in row 10. And Terry Martel rounds out the field. The cars have cleared Namuro Corner as they come out of the start-finish straightaway looking for the green flag to get this one underway. Spinard and Rick Bye charge into turn number 1. Jacques Leliev moves down to the inside. Through turn 1, Spinard and Rick Bye side by side. Leliev moves up alongside of Rick Bye, and yes, he has moved into the second place position. Spinard leads. Jacques Leliev into the number 2 spot, and Rick Bye, who qualified on the front row, is back in third, and you're on board with Rick Bye as he tries to chase down Jacques Leliev aboard the number 16 Porsche.
Richard Spenard opening up a bit of an advantage here over Liliev, who appears to be holding up Rick By, but as they come through this right-hand turn, Liliev manages to hold on to that second place position. Rick By runs in third. The fourth place driver then would be Scott Goodyear in the Diet 7-Up car, and then David Tennyson back in the fifth place spot. Side by side, it is Tennyson up alongside of Goodyear. Tennyson challenging for fourth, and they're running still side by side going up the back straightaway.
Whoa, Tennyson and Goodyear almost bumped there.
And they're still running side by side as they crest the top of the hill. Spenard, your leader. Liliev having a great run here early in the race in second. Rick By runs back into third place spot.
Let's see how Goodyear handles this challenge. He goes straight for the apex, closing the door on Tennyson.
Well, Tennyson looked as though he was going to try to make a move down to the inside. He was right there, but Goodyear, as you said, shut the door. He had nowhere to go but back out of the throttle and sit back there in the fifth place position. Your leader, Spenard, up in Enamoro. Liliev has closed. Rick By is right there. Goodyear and then Tennyson as the five-car train moves through Namuro Corner here on this opening lap. Spenard will lead him onto the start-finish straightaway, but just barely ahead of Jacques Liliev, number 16. Liliev, who raced many, many times here in Formula Fords, is having one of his best runs in a Porsche 944 Turbo, but now he comes under pressure from Rick By, our winner here during race number 2.
At the racing for every position. Back in the pack, here's Overing in the white, side by side, trying to move on Terry Martell.
Overing in the last place position at the moment aboard that Dicom Express Porsche. We're back with the leaders. Spenard still leads over Liliev, who continues to feel the pressure of Rick By in the third place position. Then it is Scott Goodyear in the Diet 7-Up Porsche, and right with him now David Tennyson, as Tennyson again mounts a challenge for fourth. You're on board with Scott Goodyear as Rick By pulls to the inside of Liliev, and Rick By will take over the second place position. Liliev comes right back. Tennyson now makes a move down to the inside. He'll move up into fourth place. So they shuffle the deck up front. Spenard still leads, but we've got a new second place driver. We've got a new fourth place driver.
And here's a look at our complete leaderboard. Spenard in first, Rick By, then Jacques Liliev, David Tennyson, Scott Goodyear rounding up the top five. Jacques Bienvenu followed by Bill Adam, Richard Laporte, Ludwig Heinrath, and Uli Bieri making up the top 10.
The front-running four drivers now have broken away from Scott Goodyear, who's dropped back just a little bit as they come up in Enamoro. It is still Spenard leading, Rick By in second, Jacques Liliev in the red car in third, and David Tennyson in fourth. You're on board with Richard Spenard aboard the Motormaster Porsche as he comes up across the line, heading into that very difficult turn number 1.
Pat Spenard is really a practiced driver, a true technician. Remember, his profession is teaching racing, and even under race pressure, each lap, each shift, each turn is calculated. I asked him earlier about his strategy for beginning a race from the front row.
If it's easy for me to take a lead without abusing the car, and that's the main thing, you don't want to abuse your tires and the car to extend your lead too early. If I can extend my lead without abusing the car, then I'll do it. Now, if I feel I have to push too hard, probably it's safer just to hang back a little bit, you know.
That's the Reebok crew, and they're looking for Chris Gleason. Now, he came into the pits after the first pace lap. Thought he had a turbo problem, but nothing was found. He had to start the race from the pits, and now he is going after Ted Powell in the Fuji car.
On board with Scott Goodyear, the Sondy Handycam, providing these pictures just ahead of Goodyear, the battle for third place as David Tennyson closes on Jacques Liliev. Tennyson pulling up alongside through this left-hand turn. They go side by side, and now Tennyson moves around Liliev to take over the third place position. Scott Goodyear with the best seat in the house to watch that action.
A 7-car train has developed, everyone within reach and thinking about moving up one more spot. Stay with us. We'll be back with more of race number 3 of the Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup Championship right after this. Welcome back to the Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup Championship Series. Brian McGorman along with Pat Gonzalez. We're at race 3 from Le Circuit in Mont Tremblant.
You're with the second place driver, Rick By, as he tries to chase down Richard Spenard, but here's David Tennyson right up alongside in Enamoro. Tennyson wants that second place position. He will pull up alongside of Rick By as they're about to come out of the final turn and onto the start-finish straightaway. Tennyson challenging for the second place position. He will move around Rick By into the number 2 spot. David Tennyson, who qualified here brilliantly during round number 2, only to run into problems during the race, and he was also the pole winner here back at the end of last year, so he has qualified well here at Mont Tremblant. He has not had the race results to match those brilliant qualifying efforts, and right now he's moved into second place position and goes after the leader, Richard Spinard. There you can see the interval between the leader, Spinard, in the red and white car, and then that blue and white Denon Audio Porsche of David Tennyson. Rick By in the number 8 Reebok Porsche. That is the yellow car in third. Just behind him, it is Jacques Lilliab in the red Porsche, and then Scott Goodyear in the Diet 7-Up Porsche. You're on board with Scott Goodyear as he moves down to the inside of Lilliab. And Scott Goodyear has muscled his way through to the inside into the fourth place position. Scott Goodyear, who has been racing Indy cars and IMSA GTP cars, making his only appearance in the Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup this year here at Mont Tremblant.
At the top of the hill, Spinard's still the leader, but look at the action in the backfield. That's Goodyear out wide.
Bill Adam moves to the inside of Jacques Bienvenu. Adam going for the 6th place position, and he will come through. A beautiful job of outbreaking Jacques Bienvenu there by Bill Adam into number 3 Toshiba Porsche.
On board now with Scott Goodyear. He's fresh from racing Indy cars last weekend, so he's hardly rusty, but still came out for extra testing in the Porsche. Asked him why he felt he needed the extra practice.
The reason I came out for testing yesterday simply was to get a tune to the car. And no matter what series you drive in, the guys that are driving the series year-round have been doing it, and they're up to 100% speed, and it's important to come out and get a few laps to feel the car. Cars are just like people. They have different personalities, and if you can get some testing laps in, you can get yourself up to 100% speed and get ready for race day. So no matter what car you're driving, ground effects, non-ground effects, single-seater, sedan car, it's important just to come out and get tuned back up again.
Bad news now for Bill Adam. He's had a problem, and he's signaling he's coming into the pits.
As Bill Adam heads for pit road, the battle for 12th moves in. A Namro, that is Len Campbell in the red number 11 Porsche, holding on to 12th place at the moment, but he is coming under pressure from David Seabrook as Seabrook closes right on him. There's the blue flag being displayed to the drivers just to let them know that there are other cars right there behind him as they go through turn 1.
Here's a look at our leaderboard now. Richard Spinard still in front, David Tennyson, then Rick By, Scott Goodyear, and Jacques Lilliab. Jacques Bienvenu is in 6th, Richard Laporte, Uli Bieri, Ludwig Heimrath, and then Larry Caruso rounding out the top 10.
David Tennyson now coming under pressure from Rick By as he closes back up to challenge. A little bit further back, 71 Larry Caruso and number 75 Chris Gleason having a go at each other through Namaro.
Pat, that's the race for 10th. Chris Gleason has charged. He had to start from the pits, and now here he is battling for 10th.
The two drivers side by side as they come onto the start-finish straightaway, and Chris Gleason will take over that 10th place position. Chris Gleason, who had one of his best finishes ever, 2nd place here during round number 2 behind winner Rick By, and he has moved into that 10th place spot. You're with the leader, Spinard, as he goes through Tennyson, and then Rick By, who now comes under pressure from Scott Goodyear. The red car there, Jacques Lilliab, runs 5th. Then it's 89. That is Jacques Bienvenu in the 6th place position, and back in 7th, the number 5 car of Richard Laporte. His crew has done a great job getting that car back together here for round number 3 after that horrendous rollover in Namaro during round number 2 here at Mont Tremblant. Spinard, number 4, continues to lead aboard the Motormaster Porsche, but David Tennyson right there just a couple of car lengths back, and you're on board with Scott Goodyear, the 1988 Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup champion, as he has nothing but the Reebok Porsche in his sights as he closes on Rick By.
Scott Goodyear's first race here at Mont Tremblant since last year, the final race of the season when he won the championship.
Scott Goodyear closing right up on Rick By up in a Namaro. He would like to get around that yellow Reebok Porsche and then try to chase down both Tennyson and Spinard. David Tennyson, of course, has had some brilliant qualifying efforts here at Mont Tremblant. He won the pole position during round number 2, and that race you talked about, Brian, at the end of last year was where Tennyson set the outright Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup qualifying record here at Mont Tremblant. Scott Goodyear fighting the wheel of that Porsche. Now he gets in a little bit sideways, loops the car around, lights up the tires. He's off the racetrack into the tire walls. Goodyear puts it in gear. Now he will get back onto the track, but Scotty Goodyear pushing it perhaps a little bit too hard, chasing Rick By, and he slides off the racetrack and has lost several positions.
Here's the replay, Pat, and you hit the nail right on the head. Goodyear is just pushing it too hard, loses control right here, and then slowly slides off and into the tire walls, so no damage to the car or nothing severe, and he is back into the race.
Scott Goodyear now running in 7th place, but that was an uncharacteristic piece of driving by Scotty Goodyear. You're with Rick Bye as he moves up the back straightaway. Rick Bye will put a lap on the 44 car of Terry Martell as he closes now on David Tennyson and Richard Spenard. Spenard still your leader. Tennyson right behind in second.
You know, Pat, before the race, I asked Rick for a prediction on what would make the difference as this race progressed.
It's going to be trying to save the car and the tires and having the best car in the last 5 or 6 laps, I should think. The cars, the brakes, the tires, everything go away on this track because the surface is so abrasive and the nature of the track. And it's going to be a matter of trying to put together smooth, easy laps in the beginning. But that's very difficult because everybody else is going to be going like crazy. So.
One man who's been able to do that and has capitalized is Chris Gleason, who's now in 10th place.
Chris Gleason in that yellow number 75 Porsche, who has had a great run here since starting in pit road, and he is closing on the 9th place car of Ludwig Heimrath.
And here's a look at our leaderboard as it stands now. Richard Spenard still in front. Tennyson, then Rick Bye, Jacques Leliev, and Jacques Bienvenu. Richard Laporte now 6th. Scott Goodyear 7th. Uli Bieri, Ludwig Heimrath, and Chris Gleason to round out the top 10.
Car number 88 of Peter Overing, that is the twin car to Jacques Bienvenu, the Dicom Express Porsche, one of 2 team cars in this event. Overing right now running all by himself, well outside of the top 10. You're back with the leaders who now come up in an Amaro. David Tennyson is all over Richard Spenard as just 2 or 3 car lengths separate those 2 drivers. Spenard still leading Tennyson. Look at this battle between number 5, Richard Laporte, and the 89 car of Jacques Bienvenu. They have been running this close together for several laps now. Bienvenu running in the 5th place spot. Laporte is 6th, and then Scott Goodyear behind in 7th. Richard Spenard still leads David Tennyson. You can see Tennyson just how hard he is trying. You're with the 3rd place driver who's trying to make it a 3-way shootout for the lead. But Rick Bye has some catching up to do aboard that Reebok Porsche as he tries to chase down both Tennyson and Spenard. What was once a 7-car freight train for the lead has now become just a 3-car race up front. And look at the gap back to the 4th place driver, Jacques Leliev in the red Porsche. Jacques, who qualified well here in 3rd, ran up as high as 2nd. And then behind him it is 89 Bienvenu and then number 5 Laporte.
This is Scott Goodyear coming in, and he's going to give you a driver's eye view of turn 7.
It's a sweeping right-hand corner with a bump just before the apex. On a good lap, the drivers tell us that the car gets light off the bump and drifts to the outside edge of the track. The best setup for the back hairpin is to stay to the left side. You then enter that hairpin wide, turning in slowly to make the late apex. This corner is critical in turning a quick lap. The driver must exit the hairpin with enough speed to take advantage of the long climb up the back straight, over the crest of the hill, before braking hard going into the S's. This is one of the most popular passing sections of the racetrack.
Scott Goodyear doesn't have to worry on this lap. He has a solid hold on 7th. Stay with us. We'll be back with the finish of race number 3 from Mont Tremblant in just a moment. Welcome back to the Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup Series. We're in the closing laps of race number 3 from Mont Tremblant, Quebec.
You're looking at the battle for 9th place between Ludwig Heimrath and number 75, Chris Gleason. And it has been all uphill for Gleason after starting on pit road when they had some problems with the car. Just before the start of the race, he has climbed up into 10th, looking for the 9th place position. You're back with the leaders, Richard Spenard, just ahead of David Tennyson and Rick Bye, continuing to inch just a little bit closer to these 2 drivers. Scott Goodyear, who ran up as high as 4th, now runs in the 7th place position aboard the Diet 7-Up guest car. Scott making his only appearance in the Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup Series this year. Spenard, the leader, hard braking in a narrow corner. Tennyson is right there, and Rick Bye still trying to play catch-up from the 3rd place position. These 3 drivers have broken well ahead of the rest of the field. As the 1st and 2nd place cars come up across the line, they get the 1 lap to go. Indication from the flagman high atop the Pirelli flagger stand. Through turn 1, Spenard, if anything, starting to stretch it out just a little bit. Richard Spenard digging down a little bit deeper, relying on all his years of driving experience to stay ahead of the young Charger in David Tennyson, and Spenard has pulled out a good 9 to 10 car lengths now with less than a lap to go. Rick Bye about an equal distance back into 3rd place position. Richard Spenard, who qualified his Motormaster Porsche on the pole here at Mont Tremblant, after Tennyson won the pole here during round number 2. And right now, Spinard and Tennyson, the two drivers who have been fastest in qualifying here at Mont Tremblant so far this year, run 1-2. A little bit further back now, Chris Gleason has taken over that 9th place position from Ludwig Heimrath, and Gleason really has had a strong run after finishing second to teammate Rick By during race number 2, so he has got to be satisfied with his effort after having those mechanical problems earlier. At the end of the back straightaway, they go into the S's for the final time. It is still Spinard leading, Tennyson in the blue Denon audio car in second, and then Rick By in that yellow Reebok Porsche runs back in third. With less than a lap to go, you're sitting beside Rick By as he comes under the bridge now for the final time, knowing that he is going to run out of laps. The top 3 drivers still running close together on the racetrack, but with just a couple of corners to go, it looks like the checkered flag will see Spinard, Tennyson, and Rick By in that order. They clear Namuro corner for the final time. Spinard about 9 or 10 car lengths separating him and the second place driver Tennyson as they come up across the line. The checkered flag is out, and Richard Spinard has won the Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup race here at Mont Tremblant. Tennyson finishes second, Rick By across the line in third. The 16 car of Jacques Liliev, who ran up as high as second in the early going. Jacques will finish back in the 4th place spot as he takes the checkered flag, and that'll be number 89, Jacques Bienvenu. Here is the battle in Namuro. David King locks up the wheels. He hits the tire wall. David King and David Seabrook were side by side in Namuro, battling for positions on that last lap. And David King will get it back onto the racetrack. He will take the checkered flag.
And let's look at our top 10. Richard Spinard, the leader wire to wire to capture his second victory of the year, holding off his ex-student David Tennyson. Rick By is third. Jacques Leliev, a great race to finish in 4th place. The veteran Jacques Bienvenu in that Dicom Express finishing in 5th. Rounding out the top 10 in 6th spot is Richard Laporte. Scott Goodyear, the defending champion, driving that 7-Up guest car to 7th place. Uli Bieri is 8th, Chris Gleason 9th, and Ludwig Heimrath rounds out the top 10.
Applause for our Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup winner, Richard Spinard, as he gets congratulations from our series sponsors, Rothmans and Porsche. He'll now climb the victory podium along with the 2nd place finisher, David Tennyson, to his left. And now congratulations from our 3rd place driver, Rick By.
Quite a victory for Richard Spinard. He leads start to finish in winning round 3 of the Rothmans Porsche Turbo Series here at Le Circuit Mont Tremblant. Join us next time. We'll be at Mosport Park in Toronto. For Pat Gonzalez, this is Brian McGorman saying so long from Le Circuit at Mont Tremblant, Quebec.